I'm Matt Clark, Practical Fishkeeping's website editor.
And I'm Jeremy Gay, Deputy Editor of Practical Fishkeeping magazine.
And this is the second, slightly belated, Practical Fishkeeping video podcast. Visitors film shark eating shark at public aquarium. Visitors to the Mall of America's Underwater Adventures Aquarium have filmed a 9-foot sand tiger shark attempting to swallow one of its tank mates.
Another shark?
Yeah, another shark. It was about 4.5 foot long, the shark.
It doesn't look that big though, does it?
No, it's pretty chunky fish. It was first highlighted by a user on our forum and had been quite extensively covered on the mainstream media. The actual video clips show the adult shark, the sand tiger, swimming around the aquarium with this back end of a smaller white-tip reef shark.
It's quite disturbing really, because it looks like it could bite it in half at any point. Yeah,
you would think that the shark inside its mouth would be in a pretty bad way, but amazingly...
I was amazed by that. I've actually got the tooth of a sand tiger shark that I was given at Blue Reef, and it's really puncturing and really sharp.
Yeah, and shows how tough their skin are,
well, exactly. I mean, considering the bite force of a shark as well.
Yeah,
you'd think it would
chop it in half. It was a long way into its mouth as well. It was sort of at least halfway in. You couldn't see the dorsal or anything. It was quite a long way down this shark's mouth, and it swam around for quite a while. And then in the second of the clips that were uploaded to YouTube, which we've got on the actual news story on the website, you can see the aquarists above in a boat using a long-handled pair of feeding tongs. Grab hold of the shark's tail and try to pull it out of the shark's mouth. Yeah. And they eventually managed to free it slightly, and the sand tiger released it. And then two divers swam down and retrieved the shark, and apparently it's doing well, which is quite amazing, really. Yeah,
I think that eventually is the word as well, because the whole thing was a bit bumbled, wasn't it? The rescue attempt, and am I right in thinking there are still people actually watching this as it was going on? The aquarium was still open. They didn't kind of cordon it off and say, right, sorry, there's a problem in the exhibit. They just kind of went ahead and did it.
No, that's right. Apparently it's not the first time that it's happened either. When I first saw the story, on one of the YouTube videos, there's a caption that the submitter has added, which says that the aquarium was previously warned that this shark, which has eaten a number of tank mates in the past, including a shark and other barracuda, I think, they were warned that it had the potential to eat its tank mates and that some of the other fish were at risk, but they seemed to ignore that advice. We contacted the aquarium for official comment on this, but they haven't responded to our email.
Yeah, it's got lots of new commenting. Obviously, it's been a very popular news story. It strikes me as slightly sensationalised and a little bit negligent by the aquarium in question. It's a classic big fish may well eat small fish, and this one's definitely done it.
Shows that public aquaria get it wrong. Okay, a new Benthochromys species has been described from Lake Tanganyika. Benthochromys is a genus of very deep water cichlids with really long pelvic fins. I think they live in water sort of 50 to several hundred metres deep.
Yeah, apparently when they're wild caught they need to decompress them to bring them up, and that adds to the price of the fish.
They're not a common fish really in aquaria.
No, they're actually quite weird as cichlids go though, because they look vaguely like a cyprochromys, like a sardine cichlid, but they get really big. They get to kind of 6 or 8 inches long, and they're quite peaceful, aren't they?
They are quite peaceful. Quite an elegant fish as well, very long graceful fins, and quite attractive colour pattern as well. It's got long blue stripes and bits of yellow on it. The second species, or third species, sorry, there's another one called, the main one is Benthochromys tricotti, which is I think the first one described, and then there's a second, Benthochromys melanoides, which presumably eats snails.
Oh, melanoides.
Oh, maybe it's, maybe it's to do with colour, yeah, of course. And then the third one, which has recently been described by Tetsumi Takahashi of Kyoto University, the same person that described the second Siphotilapia gibberosa, is called Benthochromys horii, and this one is apparently already on sale in the aquarium trade. It's been in sale in the trade for quite some time.
In fact, when looking at the picture, I didn't know that it wasn't a tricotti.
Yeah, well, nor did we. We had to, Hyok Hee had to have a very close look at it to try and identify the fish, but basically there's some very subtle differences between Benthochromys tricotti and Benthochromys horii. If you count the rays in the dorsal fin on the back of the fish, the new species, horii, has 30 to 31 rays, whereas the tricotti has 28 to 29. And the eye diameter on the new species is also slightly smaller, than it is on tricotti as well.
So how are people going to check that then, Matt? Are they going to need to take the fish out and actually count rays, or is this going to be more obvious than that?
Yeah, you could do it from a photograph if you're pretty skilled with a camera. A lot of the time when we're identifying things for interesting imports, we'll use one of Neil's high-resolution photographs to get a good quality still of the fish, so you can count the rays. But otherwise, it's a pretty difficult thing, particularly when you're only talking a couple of rays difference. It's not an easy task. Because obviously, most of these characters that they use when they describe a species are designed for taxonomists to use, really, not for
They're not really written in plain English always, either, I don't find.
No, they're written like that because the papers can then be understood by people in any language, really.
Sure.
So it takes the ambiguity out of it.
Yeah, the good news is, at the end of the day, if you own tricotti, you may have this third new species in with them. So look at the pelvics, because the pelvics are a bit of a giveaway.
They're also longer. A bit longer. Yeah, 30% of standard length compared to 25% of standard length in tricotti or melanoides.
And it's interesting that more stuff's coming out of Lake Tanganyika as well, because it was thought for some time to have quite a finite number of species, and to find more species is interesting. So.
Yeah, it's very good. Worth looking out for in the shops, that one. Study highlights migration is in undescribed Arapaima. The Arapaima, or pirarucu, is a really huge freshwater fish from Brazil.
It's one of my favourite fish. It's enormous.
It's very big. We saw some when we were on holiday, or working on holiday.
It wasn't a holiday, it was work.
When we were working in Singapore earlier on this year, or last year, and they were about, 4 or 5 foot long, I suppose?
I thought they were manatees,
they were huge.
To be honest.
They were sort of this wide.
We wound each other up about seeing them, and then there was some, and I kind of cried wolf a little bit because Matt initially didn't believe me. Yeah, and that was after looking at Elton angels, which was equally as nice.
No, they were impressive fish. In the wild, in South America, they can grow to a good 10 feet long, huge things. And they're a popular food fish as well. When we went to Brazil a few years back, there was actually one of the restaurants we went to, Arapaima steaks on the side. And this is a CITES Appendix 1 listed species. It's highly protected.
So that was illegal?
No, it's not illegal, because CITES only protects the species against international trade.
Okay.
There's probably some sort of laws on the sustainable fishing of the species in Brazil.
Fine.
But it's a food fish to them.
I didn't eat any anyway, did you?
No, nor me. No, I don't eat anything on Appendix 1. No. Anyway, the story is about a research paper by a guy called Leandro Castello, who's working as part of a development institute in South America, studying the Arapaima in the wild. And he's looking at migration, both longitudinal migration, which is the way the fish moves up and down the river, and also lateral migration, which is the migration that occurs when the rivers flood and the fish travels right into the rainforests, either to breed or to feed at certain times of the year. But the thing that really raised my interest in this story was that right at the end, the author mentions very, very briefly that the species that he studied in this study of migration is actually undescribed. And at the moment, there's only one species known, Arapaima gigas, which was described in 18-something or other. The genus hasn't been revised since about 1847. And apparently there are a number of species of Arapaima, which is not something that's been
that's interesting.
known. So I contacted his PhD supervisor, Donald Stewart, for a little bit more information. He's confirmed that they are working on a revision of Arapaima, so in the near future we're going to see a number of species being described.
Would there not be implications with CITES though?
Yeah, there are. He wouldn't discuss that with me specifically until the paper was out, but there have been previous problems with animal protection legislation in the past, particularly with an animal called the tuatara, which is Sphenodon punctatus, I think. Basically, it's a protected species. I think it's from New Zealand or somewhere.
Is that what type of animal is it?
It's a lizard,
right? Okay.
Big chunky lizard called a tuatara. I think it's relatively closely related phylogenetically to crocodiles or something.
Okay.
I'm no expert on reptiles, but that's sort of my dim and distant biology coming through. But anyway, this species is protected under the law of the country where it comes from, but it was protected under Sphenodon punctatus.
I see.
Or Sphenodon. And when it was split into two species, the second species didn't have protection.
There's a loophole, effectively.
Yeah, and then it was exploited, and the second species that was split from the original one ended up in trouble as a result, really. So obviously they need to take that into account when they split the species, really. It'd be interesting to see what happens. There should be a paper coming out maybe this year, maybe next. Imports of popular aquarium fish may be restricted. Imports of a wide range of popular wild-caught tropical fish could be restricted later this year when a new EU directive is introduced. Basically what's happening here, there's a new piece of legislation coming through in the EU called the Aquatic Animal Health Directive, and it's designed to control the spread of KHV and another disease called EUS, epizootic ulcerative syndrome. It's not a disease most people have heard of.
No.
I must admit I didn't really know very much about it at all until I started writing this story. EUS is a disease which is at the moment I think confined to Asia, and it affects a handful, let's say, up to 100 species of fish in brackish and fresh water.
Is it notifiable?
It's notifiable, yeah. That's the main reason for this legislation, because KHV is now a notifiable disease. So the EU has to take measures to prevent the disease getting into the UK and other places.
And so basically Europe are concerned that this Asian disease may come to
That's right.
Europe.
Yeah. It's different to KHV because KHV is already here. It's probably in the wild in this country now. There's so many places of going down with fish with KHV that it's to say that we were free of the disease wouldn't really be true.
Yep.
But we're unaware of any places that have been infected with EUS. It's not a common disease, and as far as I know, it's not recorded yet from the UK.
I'm just wondering how you'd know as well.
I don't know. No, it's obviously ulcerative in some way, but I don't really know an awful lot about how you diagnose the disease.
Okay.
Anyway, the main crux of the story is that the DEFRA, who is forming the British part, or the England and Wales part of this legislation, wants to restrict the imports of Puntius, Trichogaster, Puntius being the barb genus, Trichogastus being the Gourami genus, freshwater sharks from the Labio genus, all Channa snakeheads, Catla, which is a huge cyprinid, not really traded anyway, Masticembulus spiny eels, and mullet from the Mugil genus. Which is unusual, let's say, because the disease hasn't been found in all of these fish. It's just been found in 1 or 2 species, and in some cases it hasn't even been found in Masticembulus. So quite why they're banning or they're proposing a ban of Masticembulus isn't really clear. So, but the implications for this are pretty huge, really. It could have a bigger impact on the trade.
There are lots of Puntius in the trade, lots and lots, and quite famously of recently is the red line torpedo barb.
Yeah, it's a hugely popular fish. Commercially, I've spoken to OATA about this at length, and commercially they think it could be worth several £1 million a year to the industry, not only both in the value of the fish sales that are lost, but also on the add-on sales of dry goods, which have a knock-on effect. DEFRA are under pressure at the moment from both OATA and the OFI, Ornamental Fish International, which is an international organisation working to protect the interests of the aquarium trade.
So what does this mean in the immediate?
Well, at the moment it doesn't really mean anything, because the DEFRA is currently in a consultation period, so anybody that's affected by the proposed legislation has to contact DEFRA to say that they disagree with it and why they disagree with it, which is what OFI and OATA are currently doing.
Okay.
But this is due to come, the consultation period is due to end at the end of May, and the legislation is due to be rolled out in August. There's lots of rumours going around in the trade about the first things that are going to be listed on this, but at the moment nothing is really known about any of the species that are going to be listed, because it's still in the consultation period and nothing has been finalised. I've got a story on this which I've been told to wait to publish, because apparently there is going to be hopefully some kind of breakthrough fairly soon, so we'll just have to sit tight and see what happens, I think.
Sit tight, but worst case scenario, no barbs, no snakeheads?
No barbs, no snakeheads, no wild gouramis.
No spiny eels?
Yeah, no spiny eels. It could, I mean, it's 350-ish species in total, so it's going to be a lot of fish.
It's not good for importers, exporters, retailers and hobbyists?
Yeah, and it could also potentially have an impact on farms as well, if the farms can't prove that they're free of these diseases before they export. So,
but we hope not, and hopefully you'll bring us more news as and when you get it.
Yeah, hopefully DEFRA will see sense, and OFI and OATA will manage to succeed by putting pressure on them to stop the legislation, because it does seem very poorly thought out, really.
We'll wait and see.
Yeah, wait and see. Okay, celestial pearl danio, renamed Danio margaritatus.
Is this another PFK exclusive?
It is indeed. Celestial pearl danio was obviously first discovered in about August, September 2006.
Also known as the Galaxy Rasbora previous to that.
Yeah. We were the first magazine to mention the species.
We've covered it quite a lot, haven't we? It's had a bit of a rough ride, hasn't it?
It has indeed, yeah. I mean,
since its discovery.
It was first discovered in Myanmar in 2006 and became really popular in the trade very, very quickly. That, unfortunately, led to the species being overexploited in the wild, and then we, unfortunately, published a story explaining how the habitat was in danger, and then it was described by Tyson Roberts last year sometime as Celestichthes margaritatus. He believed that the species was so different to other cyprinids that it deserved a genus of its own. So
people did wonder which genus it was going to be placed into, and it wasn't any of them.
No,
it was a whole new genus.
It was originally believed to be Micro Rasbora because it was considered to be very closely related to Micro Rasbora, as it was at the time, Erythromicron.
So initially it was termed Micro Rasbora
Species Galaxy.
Species Galaxy.
Yeah, which was just a trade name really. It was just to tell importers what the species
I saw
was.
some shops were selling it as Fireworks Rasbora as well, which wasn't
called
quite...
Rasbora Toei. Right. People were making up names for them just to presumably get them in and try.
Bit of marketing as well.
Yeah. Anyway, it was described as Celestichthes by Tyson Roberts, but a few taxonomists didn't really agree with the placement of the fish in that genus, and we heard of this shortly after the species was described. But one of our contributors, Kevin Conway, who writes for the website, was actually one of the people that worked on the redescription of the fish. He's worked on it with a number of other people, including Professor Richard Maiden, and they've examined Roberts' paper, which missed out quite a few things that you would normally include in a description, really.
So they challenged it effectively?
They have challenged it, yeah. And they've placed the fish in the genus Danio, along with that they believe that it's also closely related to Danio, as it's now called, Erythromicron.
Because that would be the logical closest link, wouldn't it, the Erythromicron?
Exactly, yeah, that's what they found. They did a combined morphological and molecular study, and they found that the Erythromicron and margaritatus are actually very closely linked on the evolutionary family tree or phylogeny of that group of fishes. Whether that it really deserves a genus of its own, you could argue maybe it does if it's in a monophyletic group with margaritatus, but they considered it was more important to put it into Danio with the other fish.
I think that at a glance and to the layman, it doesn't look like a zebra Danio.
No, it's behaviourally it's quite different as well, isn't it?
Yeah. It's more like a Rasbora in behaviour, really. But
yeah, well, it's very closely related to, or closely linked to Erythromicron in behaviour, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I mean, they're both they spar quite a lot, which you don't always get with Danios, and it's not, quite as skittish as.
They don't pace
Danios.
up and down, do they?
No.
They're not fast water fish, are they?
No, that's right. Yeah, it's found in a wetland habitat. Yeah, so it's quite an interesting one.
And so it's now called, for the record, today it's called?
Danio margaritatus from now on. I mean, I think it's unlikely that Tyson Roberts will question the paper, really. Obviously, any redescription or new placement of a fish into a different genus has to be approved, really, by other taxonomists, and it depends on whether everybody else agrees with Conway and the other authors' placement of the species in that genus, but I don't think anyone will have any huge issues with it. It looks to be a good study, really. It's very interesting, and it's
and some of these are being bred now.
Oh yeah. Whether it's being, I mean, a lot of people have been breeding it successfully in aquaria, but I don't know whether it's being commercially bred. It would be nice if it were, because it does seem to breed very, very prolifically.
Yeah.
And quite unlike a Danio as well, because it seems to lay eggs virtually the entire month. It spawns quite readily. Okay, on to the blogs now. The first one we're going to look at is actually one of mine, called Shush, Don't Tell Anyone. What I've written about here basically is a project that we've been discussing on the forum. It's an experiment in investigative journalism. I had an idea a while back to make a load of phone calls to the trade, try and find out the sort of advice that they were offering. If I rang them anonymously and asked them for advice on cycling, I was going to try and record the advice given and produce an article explaining how widespread the advice on fishless cycling was. Because pretty much every forum that you go on these days recommends fishless cycling, and it's something that we've done in the magazine for a long time. Some shops do it, some shops don't. So
I'd say the vast majority don't.
Yeah, well, yeah. The purpose of this thing, though, was to try and get the readers to help me out with the project, because it would take me forever to ring 100 or so shops, which would be 10%-ish of the shops in the UK. So I asked the question on the forum, would anybody be interested in helping me to contact shops, ask them a question, how do I cycle a new aquarium, and then send me a report in. And I've been absolutely delighted with the response. It's been amazing. Dozens of people have taken part in it, and some of them have provided reports for an entire county. It's been brilliant. Really, really impressed with the hard work that everyone's put in. It's been superb. I'm still collating the results at the moment. It's due to, hopefully, the article due to come out very shortly. But basically, I don't want to give too much away about the results, but, well, not many people recommend fishless cycling, put it that way.
Why do we think that is?
Well, for one reason, I think it's quite a difficult thing for retailers to suggest.
Yes.
Because I've previously blogged about this as well. There's no fishless cycling kit on the market.
Not a kit, there are individual components.
There are, but there's nothing that makes it really easy. If you combined an ammonia source, we normally recommend Waterlife Biomature because it's available in shops rather than...
It's ammonia in a bottle, isn't it? Fish safe
effectively.
ammonia, yeah. Well, not fish safe, but...
Yeah, but, so you can buy a product containing the ammonia, you can buy the test kit, and you can buy a culture to start the filter bacteria up.
And so that culture would then be just a normal branded bacterial product?
The best one that we've come across recently has probably been Tetra Safe Start. There are quite a few other products on the market that have been tested in proper laboratory trials and have shown to be fairly ineffective.
The thing with Safe Start, though, is that recommends that it needs fish because it needs an ammonia source, and so we're kind of recommending mixing two different set of instructions from different manufacturers.
What would have been good, which I've discussed with Tetra in the past, would be if Tetra had originally launched Safe Start as a product for fishless cycling.
Yeah, part one and part two.
Sold it with a small bottle of ammonia to tip into the water every so often.
Because I agree with you there, Matt. As far as Safe Start goes, we're not 100% behind using fish straight away as it recommends, but as a bacterial biological starter with an ammonia source, like say Biomature, it's really, really quick and effective. Personally, I don't think there's any real need to put fish into an aquarium that's not cycled. Fishless cycling is pretty easy, really. Yeah, you just need to be patient as well, I think.
You need patience, but the process hasn't really been made simply, and manufacturers, it would be good if they could get behind it and produce a product that made it really, really simple. You know, dip tests, a tablet of an ammonia compound that you put into the tank every couple of days.
Yep.
Not a huge, difficult thing to do, really. But anyway, that's probably the main reason why it hasn't really caught on in the trade. But
in the meantime, retailers continue to advise fish, what we call hardy fish, like zebra danios and platies.
A proportion of the shops that have been contacted have, many of them have suggested just putting fish in and don't recommend using a bacterial culture at all, because a lot of them don't think they actually work, which is what some of the research has actually shown. But then you've also got another group which suggest that you add a bacterial culture like cycle or something like that, but also add fish at the same time, which, although that will work and will cycle your aquarium, it's still going to expose fish to pollution, really. So it's not an ideal way of doing it. But they're retailers, and as I used to be a retailer, you do have to make money, but personally, the moral implications have always come on top for me, really.
The catch-22 is that sometimes the best possible way of cycling an aquarium would be to use fish, but ethically and for the sake of the fish, and because we like fish, we don't want to put any fish through it. And what really makes one fish harder than the other? The fact that being poisoned doesn't kill it. It's not quite right, is it?
Yeah, it's not. The amazing thing is, though, if you ever go onto any fish keeping forum and you ask for advice on cycling, pretty much every single person will tell you fishless cycling is the way to do it.
It's been like that for years, hasn't it?
It has been like it for a while, but for some reason the shops just don't seem to be doing it.
Yeah.
It's very odd. Because I mean, obviously the fish buying public as well are going to shops and asking questions and things, and many times we're seeing people criticising retailers because they're not offering advice on fishless cycling.
Yeah,
it's quite interesting.
It's interesting because I always fancied the why can we not buy, say, mature media as well?
Yeah, actually that's another thing that I've picked up in the article. A couple of retailers did mention that, and it would be a good way to do it really. There's other forums, including ours, I think, actually offering a filter media donation scheme thing, so you can contact a member in your area and they'll donate you a handful of gravel to help seed your filter.
That works quite well, actually.
Yeah, it's a very good idea. So, I mean, there's nothing stopping retailers doing that.
No.
Maybe the only reason why they're not doing it is because of the money they make from replacement fish or the compounds that you buy when you're preparing your tank for cycling, really.
Does this have any implications with the duty of care that's now going on as well?
I personally think it does. I discussed it with OATA, and they've given me a couple of people to contact at the group that's organised the duty of care. I haven't actually discussed it with them yet, so it hasn't been finalised, but basically under the new Animal Welfare Act, if you run an aquarium or if you sell fish, you're bound under the Act to provide them with a duty of care. You have to ensure that they're not exposed to pollution and things that would stress them. And obviously putting fish into an aquarium which isn't cycled, when you know there's going to be pollution in there, is definitely going to expose them to that.
Yeah.
So I would argue that
it's knowingly exposing the fish to
problem is that
pollution.
So Keith Davenport from OATA was telling me that the risk is that you can't write something into the legislation to make that a prosecutable offence, because it's quite possible for a filter to stop working.
And you could unknowingly expose the fish to it.
Exactly. But if you were cycling an aquarium, obviously that's somewhat different, because you're intentionally putting a fish in there because you know it's going to pollute the water and feed your bacteria and start your filter up.
So it's not quite black and white, is it, really?
It's not black and white. The story should be out very shortly anyway, so have a read, and thanks again to everybody that's taken part. It's been absolutely amazing. We're planning a few more of these, so keep an eye on the forum and on the blog, and take part if you'd like to help out. It should be good, I think. Bookend. This is a blog by our forum moderator, Bob Meehan. He's asking whether books are a thing of the past now. The internet's grown, do we still buy books? Do you still buy books, Jeremy?
No, and it's interesting actually, because I've got loads of aquatic books, but the problem is they're not they're finite in their information, and they're not. I've read them all cover to cover, back to back, and I ultimately look on the internet instead. Yeah,
I must admit, virtually always now I'm going less and less to my bookshelf, which is making me a bit fatter than I used to be.
I think the issue is that the names date as well, the fish names. I mean, in our line of work, we're checking names all day long, and if we went to, say, the Bench Photo Atlas, books 1 to 5, which I used to use like a Bible, it was everything. Unfortunately, it doesn't contain any of the new species, which is understandable because it's been out for a few years, and some of the species names that are in there have been revised. So
and obviously there's errors and things in books that aren't easily corrected after a book's been published, whereas websites can continually correct and update information. Things like Fishbase are an amazing resource, really, which probably part and parcel of the demise of books and magazines as well, to a certain extent. I mean, if you look at the magazine market, magazine sales have been plummeting for quite a long time. We're fortunate in having a really big website to boost our readership. So readership's on the rise again, isn't it?
Magazine readership's on the rise, which is good.
Many people aren't, though, and obviously part of that is down to the internet. But I mean, the internet is amazing, and I couldn't live without it, and I'm like most people, really.
I'm addicted to the internet, unfortunately. I can't help it, and a couple of days without it and I'd be climbing the walls, to be quite honest. So.
I mean, there are still books that I buy, the more scientific stuff it tends to be.
I think for me it would have to be contain really good pictures.
The picture guidebooks are really good. I mean, occasionally I'll buy an aqualog if there's something that I need. Yeah,
I think that the new Koning's book is just about to be released, if not already released, and that's the Lake Malawi cichlids. I think it's the 4th edition. And as Malawi cichlid reference books go, the Koning's series are
very, very good,
phenomenal. But good photography.
In the cases of many books, though, these days you can normally find the information that you need on the internet very, very quickly, which is sad in a way. But you know, I mean, there's the other thing with books is that the publishers that produce them tend to churn out the same type of book. If you look at the number of books on the market that are designed for helping new fish keepers, there are literally dozens of them.
Everybody
got two. Makes one. Yeah, you make two. Yeah.
Yeah, and so unfortunately, I think you just hit the nail on the head there. We need more advanced books.
We do, yeah. I mean, there's obviously the market for that kind of thing is a lot smaller.
Especially with PFK readers.
Yeah, it would be nice to get more really decent books out there, really.
I'm trying to look for a really nice plant book at the moment, other than the Takashi Amano books. And unfortunately, most of them are dated. There's the Denelay books, and 10 years plus.
Yeah.
Maybe it needs someone to write some advanced books, but unfortunately they're not the type of books that publishers go for, because they're afraid that they won't sell and the market's not there. So we need a bit of lobbying of publishers, don't we?
We need some more good books. Okay, the tank I'm picking as my favourite for this month's Yawl Tanks is by Paolo Leal. It's a recent upload to the site. It's a 32-inch by 14 by 20-inch planted tank, and it looks beautiful. Really, really impressed with this one. Paolo says that he started fish keeping 5 years ago with goldfish and did some research online, and it's Dual Rio 125. He's running this using the EI method. He's using Tropica Plant Nutrition, Kent Botanica, iron, dry, KNO3 and other fertilisers. And he mentions a bit about his dosing regime as well. It's got some good comments on there, and it's got a healthy 4-point-something rating. It's a lovely tank, nice planted.
It's quite textural, isn't it? And it's got some quite difficult plants growing in it as well.
It's got a substrate of Riccia as well, which looks great.
On pea gravel, which is odd.
Yeah, presumably it must be attached to a mat or something.
Yeah, definitely.
It's got some nice lilies in there, lovely looking rainbows, and some very colourful harlequins or some other kind of Rasbora. I can't tell what they are from the picture.
Some guppies at the top.
Yeah, it's a really nice planted tank.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah,
very tastefully done.
And my choice of